Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You see your reflection, and instantly, without any effort, you know that the face staring back at you is your own. It seems so simple, so obvious, that we rarely stop to think about it. But this ability, recognizing yourself as a distinct individual, is one of the deepest mysteries in the study of the mind. And it raises a fascinating question. Are we the only creatures on Earth who can do this? Or do other animals also look into a mirror and understand that they are looking at themselves? For centuries, philosophers and scientists assumed that self-awareness was something uniquely human. It was thought to be tied to our language, our complex brains, our sense of past and future. But over the last 50 years, a series of clever experiments has begun to chip away at that assumption. And what researchers have discovered is both surprising and humbling. Let's start with the test that changed everything. In 1970, a psychologist named Gordon Gallup Jr. designed an experiment that would become one of the most famous in all of animal behavior. It's called the Mirror Self-Recognition Test, or sometimes simply the Mark test. The idea is elegantly simple. First, an animal is given time to get familiar with a mirror. Then, while the animal is asleep or sedated, researchers place a small, odorless mark, usually a spot of dye, somewhere on the animal's body that it can only see in the mirror, like on its forehead or above its eyebrow. When the animal wakes up and looks in the mirror, what does it do? If it treats the reflection like another animal, it might try to look behind the mirror, or act aggressively, or ignore the mark entirely. But if it understands that the reflection is itself, it should react to the mark on its own body. It might touch the spot, try to rub it off, or turn to get a better look. That moment of self-directed behavior is the key. It suggests the animal knows, that's me. So who passes this test? The first animals Gallup studied were chimpanzees, and they passed with flying colors. After a few days with the mirror, marked chimps would immediately reach up and touch the spot on their own faces. They understood. Since then, our closest relatives, the great apes, including orangutans and bonobos, have consistently demonstrated this ability. Gorillas are a bit more complicated, and we'll come back to why. The story doesn't end with apes. Over the years, scientists tested the mirror on a wide range of animals, and a small, exclusive club began to emerge. Dolphins, for instance, are remarkably intelligent, and when researchers marked bottlenose dolphins and gave them mirrors, the dolphins swam over to inspect the marks, twisting and turning their bodies to view the spots they couldn't otherwise see. They seemed genuinely curious about their own reflections. Then there are elephants. In one famous study, Asian elephants were given an enormous mirror in their enclosure. One elephant, named Happy, after being marked with a white X on her forehead, repeatedly touched the mark with her trunk while standing in front of the mirror. She wasn't reaching for the reflection, she was reaching for herself. Perhaps most surprising of all is a bird. The Eurasian magpie, a member of the crow family, became the first non-mammal to pass the mirror test. When researchers placed a colored sticker on a magpie's throat, the bird tried to remove it using its foot and beak, but only when it could see itself in the mirror. Remove the mirror, and the behavior stopped. This was a landmark discovery because birds have very different brains from mammals. Their brains lack the neocortex, the region we long assumed was necessary for higher thinking. Yet here was a bird, seemingly recognizing itself. It suggested that self-awareness might evolve through completely different neural pathways. And then, more recently, an even stranger candidate entered the conversation: a fish. The cleaner wrasse, a small tropical fish, appeared to respond to marks on its body when placed in front of a mirror, trying to scrape the mark off against surfaces. This result was so unexpected that it sparked fierce debate among scientists. Could a fish really be self-aware? Or was something else going on? And this brings us to the heart of the matter. Because the mirror test, for all its brilliance, is far from perfect. Consider dogs. Anyone who owns a dog knows they're intelligent, emotional, deeply social creatures. Yet dogs consistently fail the mirror test. Does that mean a dog has no sense of self? Almost certainly not. The problem is that dogs don't experience the world primarily through their eyes. They experience it through their noses. A dog's sense of smell is their dominant sense. So a visual mirror test may simply be the wrong tool for the job. In fact, a biologist named Mark Bekoff proposed what he called the yellow snow test. He observed that dogs spend far less time sniffing their own urine than the urine of other dogs. In other words, they recognize their own scent. They seem to have a sense of self, just not a visual one. This reveals a profound flaw in the mirror test. It's biased toward animals that rely heavily on vision. It might be measuring not whether an animal has a sense of self, but whether it happens to process the world the way humans do. This is why gorillas are tricky. Gorillas often fail the mirror test, but many scientists believe this isn't because they lack self-awareness. It's because, for gorillas, prolonged eye contact is a threat. Staring at your own reflection feels aggressive and uncomfortable, so they simply avoid it. The test may be masking an ability that's actually there. So, what does all of this tell us? Well, it complicates the neat little story we used to tell ourselves. Self-recognition isn't a simple switch that's either on or off. It appears to exist on a spectrum, and it may take many different forms depending on the animal and the senses it relies on most. There's also a deeper question lurking beneath the surface. Passing the mirror test proves an animal can recognize its own body. But is that the same as being truly self-aware? Being self-aware, in the fullest sense, might mean having an inner life, thoughts about your own thoughts, a sense of your own existence over time, an understanding of yourself as a being with a past and a future. The mirror test can't measure any of that. It only opens a tiny window into the animal mind, and through that window, we can only glimpse so much. What we can say is this: the line we once drew so confidently between humans and every other animal is far blurrier than we imagined. Chimps, dolphins, elephants, magpies, perhaps even fish, show us that the capacity to recognize oneself is not our exclusive gift. It has evolved, independently, in creatures with vastly different bodies and brains scattered across the branches of the tree of life.